Welcome to another episode of Abnormal Discussions. Last week we had started with some serial killers, and we had mentioned serial killers as Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer. So let's start this one off with Ted Bundy, who was one of the most notorious serial killers in American history. Ted Bundy was born in Vermont in 1946 and was raised by his maternal grandparents. He was a good-looking and charismatic man, was able to blend in easily with the crowd. Bundy was a bright student and attended the University of Washington to study psychology. This is where he began to show his true colors. Bundy was responsible for the murders of at least 30 young women and teenage girls in several states between 1974 and 1979. He would often break into their apartments, abduct them, sexually assault them, and then brutally murder them. The victims' ages ranged from 12 to 26 years old. Bundy was different from the other serial killers of the time, as he would often go back to the body, sexually assault it again, and even engaged in necrophobia. He used different techniques to gain the trust of his victims, including pretending to be injured and needing help carrying something. The media coverage of Bundy's killings was extensive, and it was one of the first times that television news features were used to track a serial killer. The public's interest in Bundy's case was enormous, and people around the country were afraid that he would be hiding in their neighborhood. Bundy became a household name and remained locked up in the media attention. After several arrests and prison escapes, he was eventually sentenced to death hours before his execution. Just before he was put to death in 1989, Bundy claimed he had murdered more women than originally thought. Ted Bundy's story has horrified people for decades. His charming personality was his way to wrong the public and lure his victims, proving that some serial killers cannot be profiled through their nature. Though he was gone for 30 years, his acts of murder continue to live on in history. That's all for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Join us next week for another episode as we dive into, let's go with Jeffrey Dahmer. So, thanks for listening, and until next time, guys, keep reading those stories.